Everybody has screens for their minivan campers. I watched every single video about them. These somehow wound up to be completely different. So yeah, unique, definitely. I'll show you what I did and exactly why. If this is your first time here, welcome. I'm Leslie, and I built out our minivan into a camper all by myself. I'm the handyman in the family, and I'll show you how to do it too if you're so inclined. So while you're here, why don't you go ahead and subscribe? We can stay in touch. I try to answer every single question in the comments that I possibly can. So get in there and ask anything that's on your mind about the camper build or whatever. I'll answer it. I really didn't want to do just screens on the front driver's and passenger side window because we have a curtain that we pull in back of those seats. This is closer to where we sleep, so I thought this would be a much more effective way to use screens. It doesn't make sense to have anything movable for us in these second row seats. So these screens I designed to sit in here permanently, more or less permanently. And I also wanted to be able to just take our window coverings and pop them up, and they stay. Magic. So this is how I did it. I really wanted my screen situation to look like it belonged in the van. I didn't want anything messy looking. I didn't want anything glued or velcroed. But I didn't start out planning this. I looked at some other options. I found a lot of videos where people use these gutter guards. This is what they look like when they're used as they're meant to be. And this is what the product looks like just on its own. It has a mesh screen as well as these diamond-shaped cutouts, so it lets the rain through, but not the leaves, right? Okay, it does the same for a window in a camper van. You can't tell from this picture, but there's actually a channel that runs along the bottom of the guard, and it looks somewhat like this. If you were to turn this rain guard exactly sideways, it would look like this. And so that's what makes it so attractive for use in a camper van. You take this channel, hook it along the glass on your window, and insert the top into the notch that runs along the top of your window frame. And when it's installed, it looks something like this. If by chance this works for you for screens in your windows, then we need to go no further. But before you go, hey, if you'd like to buy me a coffee to say thanks, look in the description and there's a link there to do that. Thanks. But if you're sticking around, cool. Let's look further at how to take this next level because I wasn't satisfied here. I needed to do much more. I used the gutter guard, and I knew that the top strip of it would fit into the notch at the top of the window frame, so I started there. I took a utility knife and I cut off the top strip. I saved just that strip, and then I measured a piece of mesh screen just about the size of the window itself, maybe a little bigger. Really, that's the key for most of these projects. Whatever you think you need for your measurements, measure it and cut it larger. You can always cut it down. Nothing is more frustrating than realizing you just cut something a half an inch too short. So I took my mesh screen and I stapled it to this plastic strip of the gutter guard. If this is your minivan window, let's get in closer here. Okay, here we are. Then you take your plastic strip with the screen mesh attached and take the strip and push it up into the notch of the top of the frame. Disclaimer. I'm not really suggesting that you get in there and mess around so things break. If you find that you can do this safely, why not? This is what I did. However, I'm not recommending that you mess things up. If anything gets messed up, that's because you went in there and messed it up. So don't do that. Okay, you with me? All right. So now you got a mesh screen hanging out your window. The next step is we're going to address building that frame. Like anything window related that needs measurements and contours, start out by making a template with a bunch of paper or cardboard or tin foil or something that you press into the window and make careful markings for the contour and measurements. You've probably seen window screen videos, so I won't go into the whole process of making the cardboard, blah, blah, blah. However, the next thing we're going to do after you have your contour and you cut out the shape very carefully is we're going to use this material called corrugated plastic. It's the same material that you see like realtor signs stuck in the ground. That's what they're made out of. They're weatherproof. They are plastic, so they won't absorb any moisture, and they're rigid. They have a sturdiness to them. Yes, you can bend them and crease them, but if you handle them carefully, they're perfect for this application. So start with your piece of corrugated plastic. I could only find white, and so I spray painted everything black later. But if you can get your hands on a piece of black corrugated plastic, it'll look really nice sitting in the frame of your window. You want to copy the contour and measurements of your window onto your sheet of corrugated plastic. But then you want to give yourself some leeway, so measure out even further, about 1/2 inch on the edges. Again, just to make sure you have plenty of coverage, you can always trim it down if it's too much. But this will ensure that the corrugated plastic will slip into the notches on the side of the window frame and won't leave you with any gaps. You may be asking, Leslie, why isn't this frame all the way around like frames are supposed to be with 4 edges? Why are there only 3? Because when we have the frames in place, we want to be able to crack the window about 1 inch or 2 so it comes down below the rain guard. If there's a big, thick piece of, even if there's a thin piece of corrugated plastic along the top of the window, we're not going to be able to take advantage of that unless we have like gigantic, 8-inch rain guards. So we need to take advantage of the space up there. But don't worry, trust me, this works. Once you cut out the shape of your frame, you can, at this point, very carefully take it and put it into the window frame. See what it looks like. Make sure it sits in there the way you like it. For added stability, I added a 1x2 that runs along the bottom of the window frame. I added some weather stripping around the bottom and the side edges. Then I stapled, or maybe I nailed it. I think I nailed the corrugated plastic frame to the 1x2 so it's all one nice solid piece. Then I ran some black duct tape around the edges of the corrugated plastic because even with all my measurements, I still found there was a little gap or two here and there. So the duct tape really helps cover those up. Okay, you have your frame and you also have a mesh screen that's hanging out your window. To adhere these two together, could you use a glue? Yes, I suppose you could if you had the right glue. I tried to glue mine with very little success. So what I did instead was I took a big ass, like upholstery needle, the biggest sewing needle I could find, and some tough thread, and I just made a couple of loops going through the corrugated plastic and through the screen and tied it off on the outside. Can I also just say here for a second, I try to avoid glue anywhere I can. Glue breaks down. Glue is subject to all kinds of cold and all kinds of heat, and I don't want to rely on something that might break down. Disappoint me. And while I had my giant sewing needle out, I also sewed on 4 washers to corners of the frame. Yes, this is my secret for attaching the window coverings. You can see here in this picture where I sewed around the washer, spray painted that black too, of course. And here below that is also where I sewed through the corrugated plastic and the screen on the back side. I did a couple of those as well. Speaking of the outside, come on around and let's have a look. Here's what mine looked like after my gluing disaster. You can see how awful this looks, but you know me, it's going to look polished. So I found a strip of plastic to cover up this area by pushing the plastic into the frame of the window. The material I used to achieve this is landscape edging. I know. I'm queen of repurposing. If it's laying around the garage, I will find a way to use it in a van build. The material is just perfect, and it really makes the outside of the screen frame look good. For the window coverings themselves, I measured the spot on each window covering that would hit the washers, and that's where I attached the magnets. Each magnet went under a piece of black fabric that I sewed onto the window covering. So yeah, let's take a close-up tour here. I mean, that looks good, right? It looks like it belongs there. It doesn't stand out. It's not messy. You get in a little closer, you can see some of the details here. The washer that's sewn in, and that 1x2 that just keeps it sitting in there nice and sturdy. And for the window on the opposite side, you already have the dimensions, everything you need. Just flip it over and do the same thing. I hope this helps. I hope you enjoy this project. The results are awesome. Enjoy it. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for stopping by.